Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir.
Order, please. Can we have some order in the House, please?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. First of all, I have to thank the people of Rodrigues, my constituency, number 21, for having put their trust in me and my party, the OPR Party, Organisation du Peuple de Rodrigues, Mr. Honorable Ratna. It is indeed a great privilege given to me by the people of Rodrigues to be able tonight, for the 5th consecutive occasion, to participate in the National Budget Debate 2019-2020. This budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, displays the government willingness and dedication for the improvement of quality of life of a citizen of the Republic of Mauritius. This budget expresses equality, fair distribution allocated to all fellow citizens of the Republic. And I stand here tonight, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as a democratically elected representative of the people of Rodrigues, for the people of Rodrigues in Parliament. My role in this House has been always to promote democratic process, engaging in the implementation of good governance. I am so privileged that the people of Rodrigues have given me the opportunity to get into Parliament so as to play such an important role in representing their views and needs by articulating their aspiration, by articulating their expectations. Therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is my expectation also to hold the executive's account on its most important economic policy tool, that is the budget, and to ensure that the budget matches the nation needs with available resources. In this 2019-2020 budget, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 3.8 billion rupees have been allocated to Rodrigues, where details of the allocation had already been debated in the Rodrigues Regional Assembly and voted. And it is in the national budget tonight for further scrutiny and approval. I will first see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, would like to take this House a little down to memory lane, since from the date of the emancipation of slavery in Rodrigues to the independence of the Republic of Mauritius, in regard to the political and economic, the particularity and specificity of Rodrigues, which had urged us, we Rodriguan people, into the process of political awakening, which had brought us to the status of what we are today. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the abolition of slavery was proclaimed to all British colonies on the 1st February 1835. In Rodrigues, the news of announcement of the emancipation of slavery was done 4 years later. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it was done on the 4th of June 1839. As I've said, 4 years later. What did that mean at that time, Mr. Deputy Speaker? It means a lot of things to us. Rodrigues, because of its geographical isolation, since the period where slavery was abolished, has long been forgotten. It is very small island, 110 kilometers square. We ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, why Rodrigues is so late in its social, economic, and political development compared to the island of Mauritius, despite the fact that Rodrigues formed an integral part of Mauritius since 1968. This is the question, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yes, Rodrigues is certainly physically small. If you look at it in its physical dimension, of course, but we cannot, when you have inhabitants on an island, take the physical dimension alone in response to its development. The size of an island, no matter how small it is, cannot be deprived from the importance of human and political level. That was where it started, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. That was where Rodrigues started to ask questions on its economic and political destiny, its treatment and status within the state of Mauritius. Rodrigues being isolated in the Indian Ocean, 600 kilometers away from Mauritius Island, has its own specificity with a distinct community. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, nature has never been kind to us. That's what has given us our distinct particularity in tackling problems, becoming resilient to adversities, and always try to rise up again as quick as we can when tragedy strikes. We are more prone to cyclone conditions compared to Mauritius. The island is very steep, so we suffer from severe consequences of soil erosion. We were hit by a severe drought in the year 1970s, which had led us to a consequential diminution of our surface water, which was already scarce at that time. That was a severe blow to our agricultural sector, leading to the regression of agricultural productions. Well before the disastrous drought period, Rodrigues was self-sufficient in agricultural production. At that time, we were producing in surplus to the point where we were sending the excess production to Mauritius. It is only after the severe period of drought that the difference in living standard between the two islands tend to increase sharply. And we started to import more and more for subsistence, to the point where we were importing more than exported. That was when some people were of the view that Rodrigues was economically dependent on Mauritius. And the question of whether Rodrigues is a source of profit or financial burden to Mauritius arose in that period. During all these questionings and confusions, there was also, close to these periods, the creation of OPR Party, leading by Louis Esclair, who is also the founder. And in November 1976, during electoral campaign, the OPR Party launched its first electoral manifesto under the title Projet socio-économique politique de l'Organisation du Peuple de Rodrigues, a political program which lays emphasis on the necessity to define a new political relationship with Mauritius revolving around a policy of training and information for the Rodriguan people whose material and intellectual isolation are the origin of the lagging behind. A policy on the economic independence of the island with a sense of initiatives and cooperation. the elaboration of a new administrative structure to look after the social projects of the island. In the general election of 1976, the European Party did not go through the election. And as with a custom of faithful to its opportunistic characteristic, PMSD won the 2 seats of Rodrigues. PMSD won the election by immorally and unethically using fear tactics and false information in taking the advantage of the material and isolation of Rodrigues of those days by installing the feeling of fear in the mind of the Rodriguans. So many of them.
Please, I'm on my feet. Honorable members, I do tolerate a certain degree of cross-talking or comments, but do not abuse the situation, otherwise I'll be left with no other alternative than to act as per standing orders. You can resume your speech.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As I've said, we lost that election in 1976, and I said also, with the opportunistic character of PMSD, they won the 2 seats of Rodrigues. PMSD won the election by immorally and unethically using fear tactics and false information in taking advantage of the material and isolation of Rodrigues of those days, by installing the feeling of fear in the mind of the Rodriguans. So many of them fled to Australia, and PMSD has urged the rest of the people to vote against the independence of Mauritius by telling lots of rubbish to the people, rubbish which I will not mention in my speech, as the campaign were based on racial and religious hatred. That's why Rodrigues voted for PMSD at that time, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because they installed fear in the mind of the Rodriguans. Unfortunately, PMSD made the majority Rodrigues to vote against the independence of the state of Mauritius. At that time, PMSD was encouraged by the Rodrigues people. You know what they encouraged the Rodrigues people to do against the independence? They want us to annex with a colony, Great Britain. That's what they said in Rodrigues. Yes, at that time, Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they encouraged Rodrigues people for annexation to the British. Do you know what the PMSD did after the electoral result, Mr. Deputy Speaker? They used the vote of the Rodrigues. They left the Rodrigues behind. They ignored the Rodrigues, got to Mauritius, contract an alliance with Labour Party, which rightly so campaigning for independence. This is treason, Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is treason. And treason is punishable by death penalty. Yes, at that time. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, PMSD want to repeat history now, as if the damage they have caused to the Rodrigues people was not enough. They wanted in the 21st century to cause more harm and more division to the Rodrigues people. And they had changed their language now. They are now using war language. They are coming, they said, to conquer Rodrigues. Et they said that on est des fous, des défroqués, des loups-garous. Things that they don't know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Rodrigues is no longer intellectually or materially isolated. we are nowadays benefiting from the same educational system. We are as educated as anyone else. Geographic distance is no longer an issue. Today, people of Rodrigues are watching us live. PMSD will never, ever be able to divide us anymore. PMSD do not have an economic agenda for Rodrigues, Mr. Deputy Speaker. If it was so, they should have done that long time ago. Their only agenda is to eliminate OPR political party. What type of agenda is that? Okay, let's continue, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I have enough with PMSD now.
Honorable Henry, you'll have the... Honorable Henry, you'll have the opportunity to rebut these arguments. You'll do it when you take the floor. We're so afraid of us. But he's so passionate about his country.
In the meantime, Mr. Deputy Speaker, OPR Party, at all times, the OPR Party continues to criticize with vigor and without any complex our economic dependence on Mauritius and the current system at that time of the representation of the island in Legislative Assembly by two representatives who do not reside in Rodrigues, who do not belong to a political party in Rodrigues, and who do not originating from Rodrigues. Being felt betrayed by the PMSD, Madam Speaker, it is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sorry, it is only in 1977 that the people of Rodrigues became conscious of the real situation, and that's when the great awakening of the people of Rodrigues began. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, little by little, the OPR Party gaining more and more popularity, and it became very clear in the mind of the Rodriguan people on the real objectives of the OPR Party. It is in 1977 that the destiny of Rodrigues were taken into our own hands together. It was at this point that the long struggle began, so as to have a differentiated status that responds to a fully asserted Rodriguan identity, and that the two islands establish a developed and fruitful dialogue, but in any event, one must stay tuned to Rodrigues. The long march for autonomy started from 1976, and it was a Tuesday on the 20th of November 2001 that members of a National Assembly under the coalition government MSM-MMM, under the leadership of Honorable Sanurou Jaknat and Honorable Paul Raymond Béranger, that Parliament voted the Rodrigues Regional Assembly Act, which gave Rodrigues the status of autonomy. This was also due to the effort of members of delegates of OPR Party on the 3rd of April 1977, adopted the resolution pour une île Rodrigue nouvelle. One of the resolutions stated that OPR want to set up a creative and productive mind in Rodrigues so as to ban the thought of dependence that is detrimental to the future of Rodrigues. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is true that as from 1974 to 1978, there has been budget increase by the government of Mauritius to Rodrigues. It was only at this time, for the first time, that a plan was elaborated for the development of Rodrigues. But despite that, most of the allocated fund was for the day-to-day running of Rodrigues, was for some government employees there and other workers. Therefore, the project of autonomy, the decentralization of power, with a proper deliberative body and an assembly of elected representatives by universal suffrage, which will be called the regional government within the Republic of Mauritius, aiming at establishing a policy of human, social, economic, and cultural development of the island, was long overdue. Since 2002, we have had a succession of 4 regional elections, out of which the OPR party has been in command for 3 mandates, up to now making a total of 13 years that OPR is in charge of the administration of Rodrigues, with an unprecedented 8 consecutive budget exercises done by the Chief Commissioner, Maurice. Since then, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is obvious that the socio-economic development have considerably improved, and it is translated in the improvement of the quality of life of the Rodrigues people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, therefore, to continue with the efforts of developing Rodrigues into creating a conducive environment for its economic development and to maintain the well-being of its people, during the last consecutive years, the budget allocation to Rodrigues have been constantly on the rise for its development, fulfillment, and continuous program. I am therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, seize once again the opportunity to thank the Honorable Minister of Finance on behalf of the people of Rodrigues for the consideration he has given to us in allocating the sum of 3.8 billion of rupees to us, out of which 975 million of rupees for further development of Rodrigues. I am so thankful to the Minister of Finance for having been physically present in Rodrigues to meet the Executive Council prior to the presentation of a Rodrigues Regional Government budget on the 22nd of March 2019 in the Rodrigues Regional Assembly. The allocated sum will be used by the Rodrigues Regional Government to continually improve progress made in human capital of Rodrigues, to continually enhance sustainable development, and increase our capability to palliate the consequences of climate change. As I have said earlier, nature has never been kind to us. With low rainfall compared to Mauritius, Mauritius has 40% more rainfall than we do annually. And prolonged drought, we have no choice in the short term to invest in the desalination plant, as advised by various expert reports, so as to maintain the requireable amount of clean and safe water supply to the population with the established standard set by WHO. In addition to that, there are other schemes set up to continually encourage people to have means to harvest rainwater. With the sum allocated to the health services in Rodrigues, Rodrigues will need to collaboratively with Mauritius through its health strategic plan to continually improve the quality of health care delivery by improving and providing proper infrastructures. Funds have been made available for the construction of a state-of-the-art hospital to provide the increasing demand of high standard quality care delivery service, so as to keep the population healthy, reduce unnecessary admission, improve patient experience, enhance patient safety, and to be equipped with appropriate diagnostic tools so as to reduce waiting time for treatment and managing illness promptly. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I do welcome the idea of the Honorable Minister of Finance in prioritizing gender equality and the inclusion of sections of the population in his policies on development. It is important that the Republic of Mauritius continues to make the efforts of organizational change and the shift in institutionalized culture, especially in incorporating gender into politics and decision-making. The Rodrigues Regional Assembly is following the same path and trend with regard to gender equality in its policy. I am glad to say that in all our cooperative boards of directors in Rodrigues, we already have women representatives. I don't know if I can say that we are once again a step ahead in that matter. Waiving restriction on maternity leave and getting more flexible on the nursing of children who is still breastfed to mothers or working class is not only a measure which promotes gender equality, it is also important for the economy of the country, as these measures will contribute to combating our rapidly aging population, thereby continuously maintaining and providing a working class population. Because aging of population is not because people are living longer due to improvement in healthcare, but it is also because of a decline in the fertility rate. Therefore, this budgetary measure not only will allow mothers to take advantage of the increased opportunity of employment, it will also allow them to have more children if they choose to. I am also welcome the incentives that the budget brings and the sum allocated to the regional assembly as well in the SME sector. Small and medium enterprises with the various incentives have helped a lot in the absorption of women in the labor market. So we need to bring further incentives, as it has been done in this budget, so as to enhance more women empowerment and maintain the contribution on the sustainable development of the Republic. The incentives and policy on SME are helping women, both Rodrigues and Maurice, to become entrepreneurs, therefore bringing additional incomes to households and more support to families. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Rodrigues was hit by 2 heavy cyclones and torrential rain very recently. We have shown our resilience to the adverse condition. If the same 2 cyclones with the same intensity came to hit Rodrigues 15 years back from now, the outcome would have not been the same. We would have ended up with more casualties. These 2 cyclones have proved to all the people of Rodrigues that the European government is right, head-on its policy, on its housing policy, to the most vulnerable, and famille and bon la case. Our housing policy is to eliminate all corrugated iron sheet houses and replace by cyclone-resistant concrete housing. In the last 13 years, we have made lots of progress into implementing this housing policy. That is why we do not have people stay in refugee centers after cyclone have passed. Most of the houses which were affected during the passage of the last 2 cyclones were those type of ex-trust fund houses with concrete base and corrugated iron sheet on the top. We are very delighted that the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance had agreed to provide funds for the provision of a new housing scheme so as to upgrade and reinforce the ex-trust fund type of houses in Rodrigues, and over 200 families will be benefited from this measure. The central government is doing a fantastic job through the Ministry of Education in further easing access to tertiary education so as to facilitate social mobility. I am, however, would like to highlight one issue, which I am sure the Honorable Minister of Education may be aware of. It is about exam fee pay for SE and HSE students. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister to extend the scheme to students who have passed with 3 credits or less if they want to receive for exam to pay their fees, especially to those people coming from low-income family or those who are on social register Mauritius, as it is now only students who have failed the exam which are allowed to have their exam fee paid a second time by the government. It would be great that the government recognizes the effort made by the student who has passed the exam but with low grade and give them the chance to resit for exam to improve their exam result, especially to those who cannot afford to pay. That would be great. The people of Rodrigues also, among so many measures for Rodrigues and national-wide, which will make a positive difference in their life, welcome the increase in the TV channel by the MBC in Rodrigues. However, we would be very delighted that continuous training be given to the MBC personnel of Rodrigues so as to enhance the quality service in Rodrigues. I am strongly of the view that a lot of effort still need to be made on this side. Mr. Deputy Speaker, yes, Rodrigues is a territorial continuity of the Republic of Mauritius. Rodrigues is not and no longer a financial burden for the Republic of Mauritius. Rodrigues have an economy. We generate money. We participate in the economic contribution of the Republic of Mauritius. In order to contribute further, lots of effort are being made both by the regional government and the national government into the setting up of the requireable structures in occurrence, the extension of railway, port development, and the connection of Rodrigues through fiber optic cable, so as to bring the economic development to the next level, so as we can preserve what we have already and continue with our economic progress. Rodrigues, Agalega, Tromelin, Saint-Brandon, and we are about to get the Sagos Archipelagos back, which will make us as bigger as Europe in terms of our maritime boundary delimitation and continental self. Let us therefore, with a huge potential which that represents, let us do this together as a nation that is embracing our future. Many thanks for your attention, Mr. Deputy Speaker.